here with Tish Harrison Warren, who is the author of several books, including the award-winning Prayer in the Night and Liturgy of the Ordinary, and her new book, What Grows in Weary Lands, such a great cover, releases on May 12th, my birthday, by the way. Your book birthday is my birthday.
That's great.
A date which may very well have passed by the time this interview releases, but now everybody can buy the book, not just pre-order it. Tish formerly wrote a weekly newsletter about faith for the New York Times. Her work has appeared in a variety of other publications. And I am also very honored to say that she wrote the foreword for my next book, A Rule for the Rest of Us. So I'm so thankful for that.
Great. When does that come out?
That comes out in September.
Okay.
Yeah. So Tish serves as the C.S. Lewis Theological Writer-in-Residence at Truett Seminary's Anglican Episcopal House of Studies. Is that long enough as a name?
Nope. I didn't pick the title. It is very long.
Okay, good. She is a senior fellow with the Trinity Forum and an assisting priest at Emmanuel Anglican Church, and she lives in Austin, Texas, with her husband and her 3 children. Hello, Tish.
Hi. It's so fun to be with you.
It's so fun. I'm so excited to talk to you about this book. And actually, my first question was, we had talked back, I think it was 2024, because I was kind of starting to think about my next book and asking for an early endorsement for that. And you, I remembered, had a book contract, but I thought you were writing a book about the body. And so I was like, tell me about the change from that book to this book.
Yeah. No one's asked me this because no one knew.
Is that okay that I asked you that? Because we could...
Yeah. I mean, I still have to write that book. I am still contracted for that book. So it's that, I don't know, 2028. Nobody read about it. Please, anyone listening to this, no books on bodies until 2028 so that
it's summer's.
But yes, I was writing that book. But it was in this period of burnout, deep weariness, exhaustion, and it's really hard for me to explain what I'm about to say. But there are times where you feel like, in order to birth something in the future, you have to get something out first. You have to get something off your chest. And that sort of felt like where I was. I was spiritually really struggling with doubt and I don't know, creative dryness, like writing dryness. Anyway, let me go back. So I was in this period of creative dryness also, and it felt like this book kind of started as like, I need to figure this out, like for myself. I need to figure out where I am spiritually, what's going on with me. Do I need to go like eat, pray, love? Like, am I about to deconstruct? Like, am I like, what's happening with me spiritually? But then also just creatively, just feeling like, I don't know, as a writer, how to keep going right now. So, I felt like I needed to sort through, I guess, creative lack of inspiration. So this book actually began, What Grows in Weary Lands, which is now a book about burnout and exhaustion through kind of a conversation with desert fathers and mothers. It began really as a book about spiritual and creative dryness. So it was kind of an art and faith book. Like that's how it started. It started as like a writing and faith book. And like, how do you keep going in writing or art, whatever your craft is, painting, music making, even things like coding, like graphic design, like whatever. Your vocation, how do you vocationally continue and spiritually continue in times where inspiration feels far away? And so I felt like I needed to work through that. There are times like when I wrote Prayer in the Night that actually started, I was trying to write a different book, a book that was really kind of didactic, and it was about like the creeds. That book will never exist. But I midway through it, not midway, but probably I went on a retreat to start writing that book or work on that book. And I had this idea for Prayer in the Night. This is my last book. And once I had the idea, it felt like
Mm.
it was like this cat on my heels that just like kept following me home. Like I couldn't get rid of it. And it was
Mm.
sort of like the book demanded to be written. And I think it was because I was more or less using this like theological book to avoid my chief actual question that I was wrestling with, which was how do
Mm.
you trust God when how do I trust God when I've been disappointed, when bad things have happened? And so yeah, I in the same way, it felt like this was a book that was asking me to write it. That's very hard for me to explain to I mean
Mm.
you'll get that as a writer, but it felt like I have to work through this before I can do anything else.
Mm.
Um so um
Mm.
yeah, that's how this book started. So it obviously evolved. It's no longer an art and faith book. It's a
Mm.
book that's more focused on faith. But you see it now that you know. Um,
Yeah,
when you read through
absolutely.
it, you'll like see the stuff about writing. What's
Hmm.
there?
It's okay. Well, I am curious, like when you think about how you came into the season, you started to think about how this was an art and faith book. That's how you started it. I'm curious, like, do you feel like your 2 years at the Times dried you out a little bit? I mean, I've just sometimes wondered
Yeah.
about the kind of the output that's expected of writers, and then, if you don't have the kind of input to sort of nourish the output, and who has enough input to like be writing essays every other week, right? And not to mention
I
the other
mean,
things that you were writing, right?
they, David French.
Well, I
No,
know, I don't know how
people
these
do
people
this.
do it. I know, but do you think that contributed to your season of creative
Oh,
dryness?
100%. Yeah.
Mm.
Yes, for sure. Because I mean, obviously there are people that do this, and
Right.
I did it. And I mean, I met every deadline. So I was never late on a piece. But
Mm.
I think a difference between I'll speak about David French. He's a friend of mine and I respect his work immensely. But we're in really different seasons of life. And I think he would be the first to say that. I mean, I talked to David actually before I left and got his
Mm.
advice. Um, but um uh my son was 1 when I started things.
Wow,
He
Tish.
was 4 when I left. And I had a when I left the Times, I had a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a almost 14-year-old. So I had a
Mm.
teenager. Um, and so um it's a really different season. And my
Yeah.
husband is not a stay-at-home mom or dad,
Mm.
parent. He was working, and I mean he's a rector of a church now. We did a church plant. So
Yeah.
uh that was part of it. I also think there is something unique about writing about God for the New York Times.
Mm. Hmm.
A lot there are other columnists that certainly write about faith and write about God. I mean, d- Ross and David talk about it a lot, but so do other people. But they could you can also do like pieces of it's kind of the you can do like horse race pieces about who's ahead in the polls and why. You can do it
Hmm.
was like you can talk about the Supreme Court and
rulings. Not that I couldn't, but I had a specific assignment to
Yes.
do. I had this specific assignment to do uh faith in public, like public discourse and private life. So um
Mm.
there were a couple of pieces that I just was like, I'm going to write about poetry or I'm going to write about something else. But that needed to be
Mm.
really rare. Like I had a specific thing that I needed to write on. And so I do think there's something unique about writing about faith specifically that was hard for me. I'm not going to say would dry everyone out, but it's very different than preaching. Um,
That was my question,
yeah,
actually. How is it different?
yeah, because I wrote about this. I wrote about when I left, I was explaining partly why it is so hard to write about faith every week. Because preaching, first of all, you're preaching mostly to people who um I mean in most settings, I guess this is true, your your congregation is not hostile towards you, or they don't have animosity. There's not a website devoted to getting you fired from your church. Because there was that sort of
Was
thing, like a
there?
website devoted to getting me not at the Times. Like there were people that were very angry I was there. Um, and
I didn't know that.
oh, there was so much. I mean, the vitriol was really quite a lot. I mean, I got threats. There was
Oh my
harm
goodness.
wished on my children. I mean, just it was very, very dark. The negative responses, I got more positive responses than negative responses, but the negative responses were overwhelming. They were intense and they were a lot. Not all of them, of course.
Right,
There were
right.
people who were like, I disagree with you, but blah blah blah. But then but there were some,
Mm.
yeah. So you don't typically get that level of anger in your church. If you do, you should probably get it.
Time to move on.
Yes. But also you're given a passage, like it's like,
Yes,
particularly for me, I'm an Anglican priest. We have a lectionary. It's like this is what you preach on.
right.
And you aren't preaching. I think in an ideal world, this is different than a megachurch, but you're preaching to people that you know, that you're living life with, that you're walking with, which is different. Than writing on God as a concept when the vast majority of your readers may have a completely different view of God or think there is no God or have just a vastly different starting point. I do not think that's bad. I actually loved working at the Times. It was a great
Mm.
experience. And part of why I loved it is because like I had this like little following of rabbis, like Jewish rabbis that loved
Mm.
my work and would write me, and which was so fun and interesting. And like I got great letters from people. And um so I loved that. But I do think showing up to talk about God, what happened to me that was difficult is that God slowly became kind of, and I talk about this in the book, became less of like the maker of heaven and earth, like this being to know and praise, and became this sociological phenomenon that we fight about. So God became a political artifact, for instance, or something to kind of explain voting patterns. And there's always the question of like, how much do I spend time talking about Christian nationalism? Like it's what everybody wants to talk about now, which I think is an important topic. I think it's really matters. But I also, there's just a whole lot of people of faith and a whole lot of Christians that are trying to live their life, raise their kids, care
Mm.
for their neighbor, that are not wrapped up in Christian nationalism. And so figuring out like preaching is this, you're working with a text and you're working with real people's lives, and writing on faith much more of an abstraction. You're not
Mm.
preaching. I can't be like, let me tell you guys what I think about Galatians 6 today. I mean, the New York Times They did not want sermons in the New York Times. And I actually got criticized from some Christians about this, that I didn't, just speak more about the gospel and what the gospel was. And I'm like, do you really think the New York Times? I mean,
Mm.
I had 3 to 4 editors over me. Like, I was not going to be like, let me just tell you the Roman road. Um, so, but figuring out then, like, what does it mean? What should I talk about and what should I not? How often do you focus on politics versus not? Like, those were
Mm.
really hard questions for me. And then I mean, I do not think there was a week that I wrote for the Times that someone didn't get mad about what I said.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I remember one time I wrote about my dog. It was like the most,
Mm.
everyone, it's the most like, this is, no one can object to this piece. Like, it's so like heartwarming and sweet and chill and Hallmark card, which is not how I usually wrote. I mean, I also wrote about
Mm.
gun control and abortion and gay marriage, and but this was just like it's like a happy piece about dogs and what they mean and our theological kind of examination of relationships with pets. And someone wrote me and they were like, how dare you, when the world is on fire,
Ugh.
you chose to write about your pet. And I'm just like, oh, come on. Like there
Wow.
wasn't a lot of that. There was lots of like, I love my dog. I sent this to my sister.
Yes.
A lot of that. But there's always someone mad,
Hmm.
which I don't think I don't experience that in preaching. I of course have had people who don't like my preaching, but that's not weekly. Those people leave. They leave your church if they hate your preaching every week.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're sort of at the end of the season of the
On.
Times.
Sorry.
No, no. Oh my goodness. All of it so worthwhile. And I feel like I could go in a million directions. And it really is interesting to see the mirroring, right? The aridity, which I just think is such a wonderful metaphor. And it's obviously not yours. Very much taken
Yeah.
from the desert. Like, wow, you're the only person who's ever said the arid desert places of our lives are hard, and that's where God shows up. But just this mirroring, right, of the aridity creatively and then also spiritually. And which one do you feel like you tackled them both at the same time? Like, was it almost impossible to separate them in the sense of now you still have to write a book? It is going to be about God, right? I'm assuming that you were contracted for the book at that time, were you? Or
Mhm.
okay. So you're facing like, I have to write and I have to write about God. And if I want to write authentically about God, like I want to live,
Yeah.
a vital spiritual life. What were the first steps you took?
So I suppose I didn't have to write about God. I was with
That's
a
true.
house, so I could have been
Right.
like, I'm going to write about how God doesn't exist, and that would.
Right. Write about dogs, a whole book about dogs. See how much hate
I
mail you can
honestly,
get.
I do not love my dog and write a book about him. I'm sorry to those dog lovers. Like, I love my dog to write one piece about him ever in my whole life. That's all. Um,
You must not have a golden doodle. What kind of
no,
dog do you have?
we have a street dog, a mutt.
Okay.
We think he's what's called a dorky. But from pictures, he's like a
Okay.
part Yorkie, part Dachshund, we think.
Okay. Okay.
He is the sweetest. He's like a cat. He just
Okay.
lays there and just wants you to pet him. He's very chill and he doesn't bark. He's silent. But he smells so bad. He's never the street. We wash him all the time, but it like he lived on the street and I think
Oh.
something is deep in his bones like wrong with him and it's yeah. The poor guy. He's a sweetie. But he has some hygiene issues. But uh yeah, I did want to write about God. I think the thing about aridity the reason that I talk in the book about I do talk about relational burnout and creative burnout and vocational burnout and spiritual burnout is I really think those go together.
Mm.
I just I don't know. I understand, I guess, abstractly that someone can be like, my professional life is doing awesome. And I feel like I'm just like in the zone and having like flow states all the time. But spiritually, things are really,
Mm.
really hard, or my marriage is falling apart, or um, I feel deeply lonely. I guess there's that, but I think that's rare. I think that when we feel spiritually dry, that affects us creatively, that affects our relationships and friendships, that certainly affects our relationship with the church. And
Mm.
I also just think like when things are really hard in marriage or in your work life or with your kids, if your kids are struggling, like I
Mm.
think n- maybe this is I will admit I am not a great person at what's the word? Like when you put something in a drawer and shut it and don't think about it again.
Oh, compartmentalizing.
Compartmentalizing, that's the word. I'm not great at compartmentalizing.
Mm.
Um, that said, I just let's go back to desert monks. Like when desert monks struggled with prayer, they were told to continue in prayer, but they were also told to continue in their work.
Mm.
Because when they struggled with prayer, it usually didn't just affect their prayer life. They began to resent their work. They began to resent their community and the people around them. They began to feel like they wanted to leave the vows that they'd committed themselves to as monks. They began to have like nostalgic feelings about the life they left behind and wanted to go back to that. Like all of that was wrapped up in prayer being hard.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I just think that aridity is more is it just affects us more deeply. Some of this is from my own experience, and some of this is reading from the tradition. It affects us more holistically. So that
Mm.
doesn't mean every single thing in your life is falling apart. Maybe your vocational life is fine, but you feel like your spiritual and relational life is not great. Or maybe you feel like you have good friends, but your job is really unfulfilling and
Mm.
maybe your spiritual life because of that feels hard, or you don't know why God's not giving you a different job, and that's been a really hard place of trust. Or but I just it's very rare for this to only affect like this only affects me spiritually. And even in the
Mm.
Reformed tradition, um I
Mm.
talk about this in the book, but the metaphor for aridity, I'm putting together a lot of different experiences described to like one big human experience. But they would use this idea of drooping spirits, which I just
Mm.
love the idea of. But I think
Mm.
if your spirit is drooping, um, that is more of a vague sense. I mean, I feel like to me that describes more of a sense of malaise than just like, oh, this only affects my spiritual
Mhm.
life, no other part of my life.
Mhm.
But for me, absolutely, they were inseparable. I mean, part of this is like, I write about God, like my husband is my pastor. Like,
It gets complicated in your
it's
house, doesn't it?
super complicated.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I was talking to my older son about this actually because I was just telling him that I would be chatting with you. And I was like, oh, I'm really excited to talk to her about the difference between and relationship between aridity and acedia. And we were talking about acedia as a vice. I don't know if you say acedia or acedia. I mean, you personally, I feel like millions, different people say it differently. I usually say acedia, but acedia as a vice and aridity maybe as a context. If you take it as a landscape, I think you're describing if aridity is a landscape, yeah, like you don't leave, if it's the landscape of your life, just because you go to work, like the desert's still outside of the window. But what would you say? Because I think drooping spirits, like, gosh, I don't exactly know what that means, but I know exactly what that means, right?
Yeah,
Like if
totally. That's why
like
I love that phrase.
oh,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I know what a drooping spirit is. And I'm curious about because I also hear despondency as a word often related to acedia. So I'm
Yep.
like, how are these related? How do you distinguish between them? And
Okay,
maybe
so
it's not that important to do
his,
so.
historically, the biggest distinction between these is that aridity is not sinful. It's like a
Uh-huh.
stage of the spiritual life. It's like an
Mm,
inevitable stage that you get to. It actually is often
mm,
seen as like an important part of maturation. Like you're not going to get to maturity without facing some aridity.
mm.
Acedia, or I
You say
actually say
Acadia.
it. I say Acadia,
Okay. There's another way.
which is how the British say it, and I wanted to do Akedia because it's a
Okay.
in the book, but it's in America spelled with a C so often that I gave in
Okay. Yeah.
C. So let's say Acedia for the sake of consistency.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it's the word is not the root is not in English, so whatever.
Right.
But Acedia um is, you know this, saying this for listeners, but ended up is one of the eight pressures of the soul or eight wicked thoughts that became the seven deadly sins that over time. It's sloth is what it's translated as. I think it is like the that is the most anemic and unhelpful
Mm,
translation possible.
mm,
It's like hard to think of a example of something in the tradition being translated that wrong.
mm.
Other than like Junia, when Junia
That's a separate conversation.
but but a theological concept I think that is mistranslated or at least anemically translated.
Mm,
But um that's like a sin, right? That's like a state of sin, or at least like it would have been talked about in the early church as like a demon, like a temptation, a
mhm,
demon tempting you, the spirit of Acedia
mhm,
coming upon you. So, that is not an inevitable stage that you have to go through. That is something
mhm,
resisted. The other distinction that is really key, how do we tell them apart, is that typically in Aridia, I'm sorry, I combine them. In Aridity, you want a soul, a person longs for an encounter or experience with God, but feels like
mm,
they're not having that. So
mm,
they go to prayer wanting the nearness of God, but feeling like God is distant.
mm,
Acedia is more that the things of God, prayer itself, feels revolting, feels
mm,
unappetizing, feels
mhm,
like, ugh, I don't want to do this. What a waste of time. Like, what, it feels like
mm,
where you kind of almost are longing for distraction, um,
mhm,
longing for um, the
mm,
things of God seem to be pressing you in a way you want freedom from, as opposed to, no, 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 I really do want God, or at least I really want to God. I want to want
mhm,
God, but
mm,
I feel like I can't find him. Like I feel like he's distant, which is more
mm,
aridity. The I Here's the way it gets tricky is that I think when we're in aridity, the temptation to acedia becomes really, really intense.
I agree.
So that's why I think they go together. So
Mhm,
on my average Tuesday, when I'm in the season of aridity, am I in a place of like longing for God, but feeling like God is distant? Or am I in a place of like kind of being like
mm,
resistant to the things of God, where prayer feels like, oh my God, I have so much going on and I'm so tired. That's like the last thing that I want to do. I mean, I think minute to minute, hour to hour, it could very well be both.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so there are these kind of for instance, like people that do like spiritual direction. There's a lot of written about how to like parse these out for people. And I do think
Mm.
that's helpful work. And I think this is a good
Uh-huh.
spiritual director. At the same time, I'm a little skeptical that they can be parsed out because for
Mm.
me, it's I may be experienced both in the same hour.
Hmm.
I may feel like I want God. I don't want God. God becomes this thing that I sort of can't live without, can't live with. Like,
Mm.
um, and so there are nuances here, but
Hmm.
I also think there is a lot of overlap. Here, chief overlap, and what I focus in on my book is that both make spiritual life and life in general feel really, really hard.
Yeah.
Um, I struggled a lot when I was writing the book with if I should distinguish aridity and acedia more.
Mm. Interesting.
And I don't, so at one point there was kind of a long, almost academic explanation of the differences that I ended up taking
Mm.
out because it felt sort of like, let me interrupt this to have an academic lecture on. The book is very devotional. I very
Yes.
much wrote it for weary people. It's
Yeah.
very pastoral. Um, and so I thought, well, in deepest weariness, do you really need like
Mm.
a theological explanation of the differences between these? I'm not, I came to the conclusion that at least for this book, wasn't what I was seeking.
Hmm. I think you did distinguish them. I mean, that's the reason why I'm
Yeah,
asking this question, you know?
there's some paragraphs on it, but
Yeah.
there was like pages on it, and that
Right. I see. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting choice. I think that's a choice that really makes sense. And I think it's like kind of side note for all the writers listening, you know, writing is about choices. And sometimes there's not a right or a wrong. There's just, you know, I'm making a particular choice. In this sense, in this context, you're making a choice for the reader, the weary reader, you know, and what do they actually really need? I feel like what was helpful for me because I tend to moralize all of my actions and attitudes. And I mean, of course, I'm a moral being, but aridity actually gives me another category to say I could be in a season of dryness. And that doesn't just mean that I am, you know, so horrifically in the grips of the, you know, the vice of acedia. Like
yeah,
maybe I am. And, you know, maybe I'm also just struggling with a longing for God and a feeling that God is distant. And that's okay to actually, there's something really comforting to name that because I think the impulse, at least the impulse for me, and I think for a lot of people, is to try to solve it, to like solve the thing. I mean, that's you in the prologue of the book, you know, which maybe you can just tell that story. Because I think it's such a beautiful image for the kind of like spiritual state that you're trying to illumine throughout the book.
yeah. Tell the story that I tell in the
Yeah, just about trying,
yeah,
you know, being at the retreat center.
because I absolutely wanted to solve
Yeah, of course, because you don't want
it.
to be there,
One
right?
of the reasons that I wrote this book, I think one of the reasons I had to write this book, going back to like, hey, this wasn't the book you were going to write, is that I just, this season of the desert that I have been in
Mhm.
has revealed to me how much I want to control my own spiritual life. I want to control God and like the way he shows up and the way my spiritual life progresses. And like, I want to put inputs in, good inputs, prayer, the sacraments, preaching, I mean, receiving preaching, and then like have like have growth,
Mm-hmm.
have flourishing, have insight and wisdom, and just
Mm-hmm.
realizing like, oh, like I can't
Mm-hmm.
control this. So the prologue. I tell this story about going to a retreat center. Um, it's Laity Lodge, if anyone's interested. And taking a retreat there. I was by myself, and it was really cold. It was like it doesn't get cold much here in Texas, but it was January or February. It was very cold, and I was trying to light a fire in the fireplace, and I couldn't. I couldn't do it. And I will say, I had on the way up there. I was talking to a mentor of mine, Marcia, who I ended up dedicating this book to.
Hmm.
And I was talking to her about my spiritual life and the sense that God was distant and things felt off. Um, my kind of family life and marriage and kids felt off, and not like in any kind of scandalous or like there was nothing major. Just like things felt hard and heavy.
Mm.
Um, and then my writing life, I was like, I've never experienced
Mm.
like I mean, what people would call like writer's block before. Like I've never experienced that.
Mhm.
And I did. And I didn't know what to do. So it just felt like in all of these places, my relationship with God, I was like, how do I keep going? And my relationship
Mm.
with my art, with creativity, I was like, how do I keep going? Like, what does this mean? And so I was complaining to her because I call her to complain a lot. And
Thank God for Marcia and many women and men like her. And
um and she we were talking, and I can't remember honestly if she said this in the conversation, or I know she followed it up with an email because I have the email still, but she said the creative life and the spiritual life alike are not usually the sudden burst of insight, like a flame bursting
Mhm.
into, that flame, like the burst of a flame, but it's the steady laying on of the logs, the slow tending of a fire. That's both the spiritual life and the creative life.
Mhm.
And so she was calling me to this like slow, steady lay tending.
Mm.
So here, so that literally happened on the way. Then
Mm.
it's like the next night, I'm like Marcia's thought like ringing in my ears this, and I cannot get this dang fire to start. And I'm angry about it. I'm like, the other thing about this is I like took a lot of personal pride in how good I am at lighting fires. Like, I really I camped a lot in college. I was like very good at getting fires started in many situations. Like I have started fires when it was raining. So, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't start the fire. And I was like doing like match after match. I kept piling things on and piling things on. And then I would get angry, and then I would like stop because I was supposed to be on a silent retreat. And in my mind, my idealism, I was like, it'll be so much better. Well, first of all, I was like actually cold. And secondly, I'm like, it will be so meaningful if I'm like in front of the fire reading and like journaling. It's not meaningful if you're just in front of like this like dark fire. And so
God can only shows up in burning bushes.
and so more and more it just became this metaphor. Like, I can't control this. I can't start this. I can't make it go. I can't. I'm like
Mm.
sitting in front of this stupid draw, like nothing's happening. There's no fire. God's not showing up. I don't know what to write. I'm deleting all my paragraphs. And then I would like read a psalm, and I would like journal,
Mm.
try to light the fire again. This happened for like a long time, like hours. And then finally, dot, 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 nothing changed, nothing happened. And the fire, like I lit a match and it caught, like
Mm.
all that kindling caught. And because I'd been piling it up over hours and hours and hours, it burned and burned and burned. I mean, it was the rest of the night. I don't say this in the book because it's kind of anticlimactic, but I eventually had to put out the fire because I had to go to
Yeah.
sleep, and it just kept burning. And so, uh, it became, so I tell that story in the prologue, and I pull together that and the idea of being like on fire for Jesus, which is something in the evangelical tradition I grew up in, there was like a lot of emphasis on that.
Mm-hmm.
And about what about those times when when you're not on fire and you don't know how to start the fire and you can't control the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're putting in the right inputs, maybe you're striking the matches, but it doesn't seem like things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't whatever that means for you. Like it doesn't seem like you're flourishing, or it doesn't seem like God is showing up, or it doesn't seem like this like internal experience of sweetness, or it doesn't feel like the vocational stuff is getting solved, or like that you're in flow mode, or um what do you do when like the fire won't start? And
Mm-hmm.
um is that time wasted time? Like, and so that's where I start the book. And
Mm-hmm.
spoiler alert, it's also where I end the book. But
Mm-hmm. I was like, really? Oh my goodness. Because I read the whole book, but I'm like, one of my questions about the end of the book was, okay, yeah, I see that. But I think what I
it's
was really yes, okay. So you do talk about the Spirit of God setting things ablaze, but I guess I was focusing a lot on that last paragraph. Actually, you read it. You read the last. I
let me
wasn't gonna have you read this one. But do you have your book?
do you want me to you're asking me to read the last paragraph of
Yeah, I
the
want you to read the last paragraph.
Okay. Yep. Here we go.
Okay.
Nobody's asked me to read from the book before.
Ooh, I love hearing authors read from their books. If they're
Okay.
well written, if they're well written, as beautifully written as yours. I should give that little caveat.
All right. This is the very last paragraph of the book. So it is kind of spoiler alert. Sorry.
Is that okay?
I mean, it's all right with me. Skip
Okay.
it. If you're listening and you don't want to hear the end of the book, skip it. I am, for now, still in the middle of my story. I have not yet stumbled in some oasis that makes my work, my faith, my relationships, and my days all seem fruitful, joyful, and vibrant. But I have witnessed what grows in weary lands. I have learned some things my cell is teaching me. I have hope that what has dwindled can spark to life, and that what seems dead can be made new. I have found that in the end, nothing will be wasted.
Hmm. I want you to hear you talk about where it ends, in the sense of like, did it feel like a resolution to you? It feels like an end. Is it a resolution to the essential problem you looked to solve when you went to write the book?
Yeah, I think I was very resistant to making the book like I was in this desert and now I'm out, and I'm going to tell you the 5 ways to get out of the desert in your life to experience like flourishing again. Like that I was I was just super resistant to it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think I was very much still in the desert. Like when I ended
Mm.
this, like I don't think I was out of aridity. I'm not sure I'm out of aridity now. I think I'm
Huh.
doing better than I was
Mm.
months ago, but I don't think it's like all resolved for me. I
Mm.
so some of it is just like I want to be truthful um
Right.
about where I was, where I am. Um I I don't talk about this in the book. I actually, maybe it would have been interesting. I sort of think like the American church broadly is in a period of aridity, in a
Ah.
period of struggle, in a period of disorientation, in a
Mm.
period of not knowing who we are or how to keep going, or um
Mm.
and so I don't think it's resolved. So uh some of it is that, but the other bit is that I just think the temptation when you are in spiritual deserts is to try to hurry them, is to try to get
Mm.
through them the quickest way possible, and to see them as something to be avoided. Like
Mm.
this is this something's got to be wrong. So like tell me what the things to do to get out, right? And I just was so hesitant to do that because I think if I gave people the 5 ways to get out of the desert, first of all, I think that's not true.
Mhm.
It might sell more books, honestly.
Yeah. We could have a longer conversation about that for sure.
I think that sells books to evangelicals. They want a program. They want the trending
Yeah.
thing that will make God show up
Yep.
in time every time they ask. But
Mm,
I don't think that's faithful discipleship. But I also think like the desert isn't something to get through. It's something
mm,
to like find God in the midst of, to like be, that's the thing about being in times of aridity that are so hard is
mm,
you don't know when they are going to end and God doesn't email you and tell you. Like,
mm,
and so I
mm,
didn't want it to be, here's the 5 ways to get through this. I wanted it to be an invitation
mhm,
to see what grows in weary lands. I wanted it to be an invitation to notice in your own life, in your own season, whatever that season is for you, what, how God is like deepening your roots, how God is building patience in you, how God is building resilience in you. So I really wanted that. And I
mm,
also wanted, um, I guess, a call to stability,
mm,
sort of stay. I mean, this book so much for me is trying to introduce the practice of stability
mm,
to the non-monastics, like to evangelicals or to, I mean, people, to regular people.
mhm,
I or mainline. I mean, I didn't mean just evangelicals, but I mean like I think stability. Like if you're like a hardcore Catholic or if you're a monk, you
mm,
know about stability. But the rest of us. And so um I I am still I wanted that to be sort of I wanted to end in a place not of like I figured this all out as much as like this is where I am and I'm in the middle of this and I am seeking stability in my own life,
mm,
seeking what my own to stay in my cell and to see what my cell has to teach me. I wanted it to be much more of an invitation to that.
mm,
Yeah. I mean, some of that is just how I write. Like I tend um to talk about my struggles more than my successes in my writing. And I don't like things that are wrapped up too easily. Like,
mm,
um, sometimes marriage books are hard for me because it's like, if you just do this and do this and do this, then you'll like have the perfect marriage, like me. And I just, that doesn't feel truthful to me. So,
mm,
um, I think I wanted to be really honest at the end and be like, this isn't all wrapped up for me.
mhm. Did you get any pushback from your editors?
Um, that's interesting. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I got not necessarily about the ending, um, but not that paragraph, but more kind of like, um, well, like, can you
Go somewhere, land, teach.
well, more like tell us how to be successful in the Christian, like tell people how to be successful
Right.
in the Christian life. And
Mm,
but there wasn't a lot of that. I mean, honestly, like it was fine. Like there wasn't a lot of that. But I do think it was a somewhat countercultural decision to not frame this as like how to get through the desert. The main
mm,
thing is, and I think this is valid, is they were sort of like, we want, particularly I think in the title, there was a lot of questions of like, we want to offer people hope. We don't want
right.
to be like, just life is
You're
hard.
in the desert and it sucks, but just stay there. What
Um,
sucks about the desert and 5 reasons to stay.
right. But I mean, that's the thing about the desert, though. You do have to stay there. Like
Yeah.
like you don't get to decide the timing of it. Gosh,
Right.
that's the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so, I mean, there is an entire chapter specifically on hope. Uh,
Yes.
so I, yeah, we were talking before we even started this about kind of the structure of the book. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the structure is I was sort of laying out the cultural problem, and then I hit stability hard. Like, what is stability? Because I do feel like that's like
Mm.
ability and resilience, perseverance, like this is like the tradition over and over again. This is their response to aridity, to
Yes.
acedia, to burnout, like this like deep rootedness and stability. But then I was worried that it would be, I don't want people to hear like in almost like a John Wayne kind of way, like just like be tough,
Mm.
stay in there and like keep going no matter what. Like I talk in the book about stoicism and how that's
Right.
not the call. And so then I take this pretty hard turn and I say like, but it's not just that we stay at our cell. It's like why and how and the way in which we do that. And so I see like the rest of the book really um especially chapters 4 and 5, 6 and 7. The eighth chapter is a bit of a conclusion of everything. But as kind of modifying,
Mm.
possibly even moderating the
Yeah.
the earlier chapters on stability. So it's like the first is like be stable, and then it's like how do we do that? What are
Mm-hmm.
the practices that help us do that in a way that is like life-giving, that's an overused word, but in a way that is like healthy and good and
Mm-hmm.
humane and um, actually builds Christian resilience,
Mm-hmm.
not just kind of almost a like a super tough guy. We just don't feel things and get through it kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or certainly because there are people that stay and they're like deeply resentful and bitter, like the prodigal son.
Yeah.
You
Ooh,
could
good point.
argue in some way with the
Mm.
older brother.
Right.
You could argue in some ways, in some sense, he practiced stability. He
Right.
stayed,
Right.
but he didn't go deep into the things of, he didn't know the Father. He
Right.
didn't practice delight. He didn't practice celebration. He didn't love his brother.
Yeah.
Um, And so his remaining was out of duty and not out of grace or
Mm.
love or joy. And so, yeah, the main thing with the readers I would encourage is like, don't stop after the third chapter. Like, I
Mm.
think the book is actually distorted if you don't have
Mm.
the modifying chapters. For so it,
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that I structured the book is for each chapter to build on the one before it.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of essentially need the one before it to get what I mean, or to it's like a tower, and I
Yep.
am trying to build towards a point. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really come until the end, but you have to have the block before that to build. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's really different than my other books. Liturgy, the
Yeah.
Ordinary, you can put in anywhere. You could start in the middle if
Yeah.
if you're like, I want to read about,
Losing my keys.
yeah, losing my keys, just start there. But this is much more like,
Mm.
I think if you read through chapter 3 and stop, you will get a distorted idea of what I'm saying.
Mm. Which just speaks to the fact that this is actually a well-crafted book because there are a lot of books out there that, they pretty much like develop the argument in the first 3 chapters and
Yeah.
then like the rest of the book is pretty much like non-essential.
Yeah.
Um, and this is not one of those books. And I think that's really speaks to the craft of it. And I think it actually speaks to your whole argument too, right? Of kind of sticking with the writing beyond the initial like, oh, I mean, because I think there is like there was an easy way in which, okay, I just stay, but wait, how? And I think one of the things we didn't talk about, but I think that just to sort of like tantalize readers, is community. I think is a huge theme that
Yes.
moderates the kind of like gritty, you need to, you got to stay in the desert, but
It's a
here's
huge theme of the book.
the huge thing.
I didn't know, I didn't set out and think community is the way through the desert. But by the time you get done with the book, you're like, oh, community is the way through the desert.
Community is the way through the desert.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
That I discovered that by writing this book.
Mm. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I keep writing is because I think, because I don't know things until I write.
100%. I don't know what I believe till I write
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I would go back to your earliest question of like, why did I write this book? It was like,
Hmm.
because I don't know what I believe. I don't, am I still gonna be a Christian in 2 years? Like I was
Mhm.
really at that place.
Wow.
Um, and it felt like I do still want to write this book about the body. I think it's really important. But I needed to learn more about AI before I wrote it. But
Yeah.
and I also needed, it was like, yeah, at this point, that book is just me avoiding the actual thing I need to be wrestling with, which is
Yeah.
so I wrote this book for who I was 4 years ago.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't find this resource, and this is the resource I needed 4 years ago. So I wrote
Hmm.
it for that person.
Hmm. Well, it really did minister to me. I have so many different places that I've underlined and highlighted, and I could probably spend the next half hour doing that, but I'm not going to. But I am going to say that people should pick up Tish Harrison Warren's next book, What Grows in Weary Lands on Christian Resilience. It's really beautiful. It's so well done. Pastoral, I think, is a beautiful way. Pastoral, meditative, and I do think it's very deeply wise. So
Wait, can we talk about something though? Can we
sure.
talk about the fact that Jen Pollock Michelle is like largely featured in the book? Like, like,
That
wait,
was, that was
is that a
special.
surprise to you? I
It,
mean,
it was. And I mean, I think I
what I
actually
meant is, I don't remember if I told you that. I hope that was okay.
didn't.
I hope it,
Oh
I
yeah,
hope
no,
it,
that was fine. I feel like maybe you did tell me, so it wasn't a complete surprise. Or did somebody see an early copy and sent me some? I don't know. Um, yeah, we could talk about it, but I mean, you are referring to a talk that I gave when I was feeling at a low point myself. That talk that I gave was so much about the mood of faith doesn't strike, you have to keep at the motions of faith. And I think that's why I wrote a rule of life book, because I think there's something about aging actually that's very arid. I think it's there
yep,
like the landscape of your
so much
life
so.
metaphorically,
So
and I
much.
would also say very physically, right? I mean, there is a dryness that comes. There's a way in which your kind of youthful vigor, you didn't know it, but it carried you. It was a
Yep.
momentum. It was like a buoyancy that you depended on that you didn't know. And all of a sudden you're
So much.
aging. And yeah, so I mean, I think that's part of my life story right now and why rule of life, but I think also the care for my mom, we have that in common. We both have moms who have an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And so, like, that was a low point for me. I don't feel that, and we had just moved to Cincinnati, we had uprooted our lives. So it was like, ugh, what am I supposed to be doing in this new city? And I don't want to be here. And I have to love this person that I find challenging. And well, I guess I just do the little things.
Mm.
I
Well, it
guess I
was
do the
such,
little
I
things.
say in the book, it was such a lifeline for me.
I'm thankful
And
for that.
yeah, and you were talking about staying in your cell and the practice of stability. That's not the language you were using, but that's what you were talking about. And I needed that so badly at the time.
Mm.
Like at that exact moment, whenever that was, 2024. Was that 2024? I feel
I
like it
think
was,
that was 2022.
yeah,
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. That's when
Mm.
I was in it. That was like, I was like, I was like, how do I keep doing this? Like, am I going to be the next, like, I left my husband and my kids and my faith, and I like,
Went
now
to an
I,
ashram.
yes, like, and it was so helpful. I mean, it was so helpful. So,
Mm.
yeah.
And I mean, I think that's a tremendous encouragement because it means that while we feel very dry, feel like we have nothing to give, like God still feeds his people through the things that we offer from our lives, even when we're like, this is like not even a lunch. This is not even a lunch to feed the multitudes. And so but it's hard. I think we could have a whole nother conversation about the way evangelicalism lays heavy emotional burdens on the life of faith. And you're
Yeah.
blessed in many ways because you're in a tradition that gives you a respite from that, that gives you some handholds. You use the word handhold quite a few times, I feel like, in the book. And I just thought that just a wonderful image, like I'm falling, the ground underneath me is shifting, where do I grab hold of? And so much of Anglicanism, I think, gives you that. I think Presbyterianism a little bit, and at least in the churches that we've been in, I think that has been true. But I think growing up, I think our 20-year-old selves,
I know.
we put a lot of emotional burden on our
Yeah.
lives of faith.
And it was so driven by being 20. I don't know how you would
Totally.
do that when you're 40 or 30.
No,
I don't think you can. I mean, that's
no.
partly why I wrote this book. And I make the exact critique. I talk about revivalism. And I
Yes.
didn't use the language of emotional burden, but that's such helpful language that would have been helpful in the book because I think you're right. And part of why I wrote this book, I mean, I also believe that like all the 2000 years of broad Christian tradition belongs to evangelicals too. And so part of this is like if liturgy of the ordinary was like a gateway drug for like a megachurch person to learn about, I don't know, the church calendar and liturgy, this is like a gateway drug to be like, hey, the way that we talked about faith emotionally
Mm,
now, what I grew up with in my 20s and you too, that's not the way the tradition has talked
yeah.
about it.
Right.
And I think that trying to recreate that sort of emotional experience you have at 21 ends up um,
Mm,
blocking mature discipleship. It like
yeah.
keeps it's actually counterproductive to growth and formation.
Mm,
And so I'm trying to like be like, look, this all belongs to you too. Like, well, like let's think about the way other people have talked about
mhm.
maturation and faith outside of, like your evangelical megachurch.
The last 50 years of Christian publishing, starting with Elizabeth Elliot.
Yes,
But
yes.
it is interesting. I mean, I find it very curious. Like, I mean, in my rule of life work, just reaching for older expressions of faith, beyond like this generation and like a long time ago, and there is something so beautiful about, and for me it's Benedict, going to Benedict and really seeing that there's a way in which you can just be about the practices, and you can just commit to a kind of dailiness, and it's okay if it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
seem more cosmically important than that.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. And Benedict came to his rule by reading
Yeah.
the mothers and fathers. So it's all we're all you and I are drawing from similar
Hmm.
wells,
Absolutely.
which
Well,
makes sense. I think we come from similar backgrounds.
we
We
do.
the PCA for 12 years too.
Yep.
Um and
You
we
tell me I'm a closet Anglican. You said that to me before.
very true. You really are. You can't. You're at
You
least,
can run, but you can't hide,
I mean,
right?
I'm just saying R.C. Sproul's not quoting Benedict. That's all I'm saying. He never quotes him.
That's true. That's true.
You're something. There's something different. Lincoln Duncan, not quoting Benedict. Um, so
Oh,
yeah. But
Tish.
anyway, and we've both, I think, found similar nourishment. And we're similar ages. And I think in this, I agree with you that there's something about this book. There's something about Liturgy of the Ordinary. I mean, I love that book, but it feels like it was written by a 30-year-old, and this book
Huh.
was written by a 45-year-old or a 44-year-old.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I had that question about how much of this is a midlife book, kind of mid-faith, but
Yeah.
also midlife. And there's
If
nothing wrong with a 30-year-old book, 35-year-old book.
no,
You
please,
know, I
by
mean,
Liturgy of the Ordinary.
yes,
It's
by liturgy
critical
of the ordinary, by prayer of the night, prayer of the night, right?
in the night.
In the
Mhm.
night, thank you. Um,
Yeah, I don't. It's a hard thing from a marketing perspective. I do not want to limit this book to people only in midlife.
sure.
Um, because I have shown it to some college students who really resonate with it. And actually, the data right now, and
Mm,
no one quite knows why this is, but burnout is being reported in higher levels by Gen Z than
okay.
by boomers, even, which has never
Interesting.
happened before. It's always
Mm,
been that the older you get, the sort of more weary you feel. But we're not seeing that now. That
mm,
said, to me, this feels really like kind of a midlife book.
mm-hmm,
Like that is what it is for me.
mm-hmm.
Like a maybe 35 to 65-year-old is kind of like yeah. It's a book about the middle. It's not the beginning, and I'm not at the end. Like,
Right.
it's like, how do you get through the middle? And
Mm-hmm.
that's to get through, but like flourish. And what's the middle do to us?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm. It's
yeah,
been amazing. It's been amazing to chat with you, Tish. Again, What Grows in Weary Lands on Christian Resilience, out May 12th, which may have passed. I think it probably will have passed by the time. 'Cause I'm a little bit behind releasing some podcast episodes, but that just means it extends, the brilliant debut of this book. So thanks for chatting with me.
yeah. Thank you.